If I told you you could get a Spyderco folder in M398 steel for under $100, you'd probably think I was pulling your leg. But that's exactly what the Spyderco Metropolitan delivers. Premium steel, great ergonomics, and a classic Spyderco design, all at a price that doesn't feel real. Now let's take a closer look and see why this might be the most underrated Spyderco that you can buy today. So, first spec is probably the most important one after that intro, and that is the price. And that is $80 to $85 at most places. Now, I actually bought mine for $71, which makes this an even crazier deal. Now, what do you get for that price? You get a 2.68-inch leaf-shaped blade, and the overall length on this is 6.31 inches, so a pretty overall small knife. The blade stock is on the thinner side at 0.118 inches, but not crazy thin. And the steel, as I mentioned, is M398. Now, if you're not familiar with M398, you can kind of think of it as an improved M390 that has significantly better edge retention. And the trade-off for that is you get a little bit lower toughness and corrosion resistance. So it just kind of depends on what you are looking for in your knife steel, but I would call it personally like a slightly improved M390. These scales are FRN, and I'm not usually huge on FRN, but I think Spyderco does their FRN well. I would love to see, some other options, but the FRN on this is great. Now, this is a slip joint knife, as you may have noticed, and we will get into that and the action here in a little bit. But the final thing is, for a price of under $100, you might be thinking this is made in China, but no, this is in fact manufactured in Italy. So you are looking at a European manufactured knife here as well. So all the specs out of the way, let's get into the ergos. As with most Spydercos, the main method for deployment is the trademark Spidey hole, if you want to call it that. Now, even with a blade this small, you can still get a full 4-finger grip on it because of that forward choil. And the scales give you just enough texture to, add a little bit of extra grip, but not be like rough on your hands or anything like that. Now, it is very thin, which, that is great, but the trade-off for that is it doesn't fill your hand the same way. So maybe not quite the amazing ergos that, some molded scales would have. But again, this is a smaller, lighter knife, so that kind of comes with the territory, and it's plenty for most typical knife tasks. Onto the lock and the action. As I mentioned, this is a slip joint knife, and Spyderco calls it their slip it system, which is basically just a modernized slip joint. Now, you can still use one hand to open and close it, which is not always the case on slip joints. Now, when I close it, the way that I personally go about it, as you can see there, I just open it, kind of slow roll it out. But when I close it, instead of trying to push down like this, which you can if you put enough pressure, but it's kind of awkward, I hold it like this, like I would be, holding the knife to use it. And I push on that, get it started, and then close it. But the point is, you can operate it one-handed. Now, as you might have seen, there is a clear halfway stop or notch, whatever you want to call that, as is the case with most slip joints. It takes real pressure to close, so it is pretty secure to use. Well, like you saw, I really had to push. Yeah, I've put a lot of pressure on it when I'm up there like that. And the choil placement, speaking of that, one of the nice things about this choil is if you say you do put too much pressure on it, like you're going to close it, the fact that you are using the choil here prevents it from closing on your finger, because your finger literally going to be in the way of that choil there. So helps protect you, and it's more confidence inspiring when you're using it for cutting tasks and things like that. So on to carry and practicality. Now, carry-wise, this is a dream. It comes in at only 1.6 ounces, and it is super thin. And it has Spyderco's wire clip, which is very minimalist. You either love it or you hate it. Usually, I actually prefer it over the standard Spyderco clip, so that was a big win for me. The other thing is, because of the size of this, depending on the size of your pants and your pocket layout, this could be a 5th pocket knife for you. And just to show that, I'm going to bring in our trusty pocket and belt simulator here, and you can just slide that down into the 5th pocket, So for my pants, works great as a 5th pocket knife. And obviously if it fits in the 5th pocket, it will also fit down in the regular pocket. And the nice thing this shows, very deep carry, just a tiny bit of the knife sticking up out there. So dream to carry when it comes to that. Okay, now with showing the carry out of the way, one of the really, really cool things about this is with the lightweight and the short blade and the slip joint mechanism, this is legal in a ton of areas, including the UK. Now, double check that because I am not a resident of the UK. I'm not 100% sure on their knife laws, but my understanding is that a knife has to be under 3 inches and be non-locking in order to be able to be carried there, and this fits that bill. Now, you won't be batoning any wood with this. It is not a hard use knife as far as practical uses, but you're not getting this with that in mind. But for everyday tasks like, cutting boxes, envelopes, light utility tasks, it is more than enough for that. And just to show you that, I have a little section of cardboard here. Absolutely no problems going through there. Kind of have the starting to bend there, which kind of makes it catch, but obviously no problems getting through that. And part of that is also the thin blade really helps with getting through cardboard, so it is great for tasks like that. As far as fit and finish, it's exactly what you'd expect coming from Spyderco. Blade finish is great. The FRN scales, like I said, I'm not a huge FRN guy, but Spyderco does a really good job on their FRN. The grind and the edge are clean, and it came razor sharp out of the box for me. So again, exactly what you expect coming out of Spyderco for build quality. Now, let's take a look at some comparisons as far as size. So the first one I have here is the other slip joint that I own, and that is the QSP Hedgehog. And you can see that one, just like I was talking about with opening on slip joints, this one is not a one-handed opener like the Metropolitan is. So that's just something to notice. Size-wise, you can see it's a little bit smaller, but very similar size class. But just a different, kind of, like I said, a more modern take on the idea of a slip joint. Now, to give you a couple of models that are going to be possibly more familiar to you, we have the Spyderco Para 3, the Spyderco Little Native, and the Spyderco Sage 5. So that just gives you some size comparisons to see where it falls in comparison to those more popular models. I think the Native, the Little Native, is probably one of the better comparisons because it's one of those smaller 5th pocket size knives. So if you like the size of the Little Native and the forward trail and everything, I think you will really, really like the Metropolitan. So comparisons out of the way, let's talk about the pros and cons for me. So the biggest pro is going to be the great value for the steel and the brand. Getting a made in Italy super steel Spyderco for under $100 is an absolute steal. It has excellent ergonomics for such a small knife, as I talked about, and the lightweight and the legality almost everywhere are all huge pluses for me. Now, as far as the cons, the slip joint design is not for everybody. I'm not a huge slip joint guy, but just the value here made me want it, even though I'm not big on slip joints. It only has one steel available and one handle option available. So it's kind of like that Henry Ford. You can have whatever steel and whatever handle material you want, as long as it's M398 and FRN. But with that in mind, there is really not any aftermarket support for this right now. So you can't get any aftermarket scales or hardware or anything like that. So you're kind of stuck with what you get. But on that note, with what you get, would I recommend this and would I buy it again? That is an absolute yes on both counts. In fact, as far as buying it again, I'm not going to buy another one of this model, but Spyderco also has the Urban and the UK pen knife that are slip joints that are kind of in this similar size class, and I am probably going to pick those up just because I enjoyed this one so much. But this is one of the few budget Spydercos, and I always say budget is under $100. So this is one of the few budget Spydercos that really genuinely feels premium thanks to the steel. And as I mentioned, the legality and the lightweight, it makes it so easy to recommend. But what about you? Does the slip joint setup kill it for you, or are you tempted by it? Let me know down in the comments. And as always, I'll have a link in the description to where you can get one of these for yourself. And if you found this review helpful, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I'll see you in the next video.